Hi, James Jones from the Mid-Pacific ICT Center in San Francisco at our 2012 ICT Educator Conference with Bob Campbell from ACM. ACM stands for
the Association for Computing Machinery, which is a sort of outdated term, and in fact now ACM would often say, well, it doesn't actually stand for anything anymore. It just represents the professional society that's preeminent among computing practitioners and educators.
So I guess you function as an association, but also importantly as a sort of curriculum and standards body for, I think of it as computer science education. I guess traditionally that's what it's been.
That's fair to say. It's very reasonable to suggest that it's focused on computer science. In recent years, the emphasis has broadened fairly substantially to include the fairly well-defined disciplines of computing: computer engineering, computer science, software engineering, etc. The most recent addition is in the area of IT, perhaps one of the more challenging and one of the less well-defined pieces of computing.
Yeah. So we're primarily focused at a community college level, and community colleges that teach traditional computer science are certainly very familiar with ACM. You see less of the computer engineering at that level, but there's a ton of IT. And community colleges have been kind of all over the place in terms of what they offer as curriculum and credentials there. ACM is now working to address that. Is that right?
That's correct. There's a few challenges that weave in and out of this. And in particular, if you look at IT vis-a-vis computer science, you can see how some of the challenges manifest themselves. Let me give you a simple example. With regard to computer science, if a student wants to transfer to a baccalaureate degree and get a 4-year degree in computer science at whatever university or college they intend to go to, that curriculum is fairly well defined. And so it's pretty clear to a community college what they should offer to facilitate that transfer path for a student. On the other hand, if you look at IT and you say, well, here's a given student who's interested in a baccalaureate degree in IT, there are very, very few institutions that offer such a thing.
Yeah.
And so the guidance that one might expect would inherently come out of a transfer process is just not there at all.
Right.
And so for that reason, with some other reasons, the notion of IT definition has been largely individualized.
Yeah. We certainly encounter that problem here, where students get engaged at the community college in IT programs because they like the hands-on experience, and they get the skills that employers want, and then the HR department has some kind of screen out there that says, oh, you got to have a bachelor degree. And then they're stuck. There's almost no place to go. In the public education arena, there are less than one handful of options in the state of California. And so, yeah, there are some private school possibilities, but this is a space that has lots and lots of jobs, and as public education, we need to deal with it better than we have.
Well, I think one of the points that your center has done a good job of making is that with regard to nomenclature, we're all over the map. How on earth can a hiring director get a grip on what skill sets a student brings if their degree titles are so varied and the curriculum is so varied? One of the things that a lot of hiring organizations and a lot of prospective students as future employees rely on are certification exams. And so you see this sort of alphabet soup of certification exams that a student has accumulated. And that's great. That's fine. It facilitates their opportunities. But, excuse me, but those shouldn't exist in the absence of some sort of definition about what is IT and what might that core IT set look like from campus to campus to campus.
Yeah. So I guess you're involved with a group associated with ACM that's tackling some of these issues, and even though standards tends to be a dirty word in education, none of these technologies work without standards. So let's call it a framework, which people won't get irritated with. What progress is being made? What is the effort now to create a framework or some kind of consistency in the way public education addresses IT?
Yes, and let me say I appreciate your suggestion that we navigate the political pathway carefully, but setting that aside, right? So let's talk about what this content might look like. ACM, for many, many years, has a history of supporting initiatives not only to serve practitioners, but also educators in various computing domains. The ACM Committee for Computing Education in Community Colleges, CCECC, has focused on writing curriculum reports to provide guidance with regard to computer science and computer engineering and software engineering and some of these other fields. Many years ago, we produced a report that today would be characterized as IT. At the time, the phrase IT didn't exist in the sense that it does today with the recognition that it does. Okay, so that's the past. Where are we today? The ACM Ed Board, which oversees the CCECC, the two-year college committee, has charged the committee with the following question. Should ACM provide curricular guidance of this sort, which is to say, should ACM publish a set of standards, framework, guidance, whatever language we want to use that's palatable, right, to the recipient, that defines what we mean by IT. And a working group has been engaged in that effort. That working group has reached some preliminary decisions, recommendations. It hasn't been formally submitted yet to the Ed Board. But let me take a minute and I'll tell you the nature of those recommendations.
Good.
The first is to acknowledge that it's from one individual to another. If you take a given program and you say, is this an IT program? Some people will agree wholeheartedly, others will disagree, and a lot of people are in the middle. Bioinformatics, is that an IT program? Some will say yes, some will say no. Certainly programs in game design and computer forensics, we all sort of say, yeah, those are IT programs. But what about these ones on the fringe? If you can't identify an IT program through the nomenclature, you might say jargon, then how do you? What do you do? So the idea is that instead of looking at some universe, look at some intersection. What's the intersection of IT skill sets, of IT competencies that a student needs, irrespective of how they might apply those in what we might call an IT-related program? So that's the concept. Can one define a set of IT, an IT core, and build that IT core not around topics, not around knowledge units, not around subject areas that we tend to think of as courses, but around learning outcomes. Once a student has completed this core, your school, my school, that school, this school, these are the learning outcomes that a student will have achieved and be able to demonstrate proficiency in. That's the direction we're going. A long answer to what starts off always as a simple question.
It's funny because we published a Phase 3 report here in California, and we came to exactly the same conclusion, that we need a common core for IT-related programs in the community college that is organized around student learning outcomes or objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we can establish sort of a baseline of value for academic credentials. So anybody who comes through the community college system and gets an ICT-related degree knows and can do at least this. So there's that baseline of value for the academic credential. Then you can hang whatever you want off the top of it. Specialization in this area and some obscure technology. You know, we need all of these things. It's a big, complex field. But we need at least some sort of base core that establishes some common value.
I think traditionally, if we look at a field like mathematics, it's been the case that mathematics exists as its own discipline, of course, but a lot of other programs, a lot of other degree programs, and almost always general education requirements, require mathematics. And in that sense, mathematics becomes a service discipline to inform students' abilities in other disciplines. IT can very well fulfill a similar role. It doesn't detract from the notion of someone studying what might be characterized as pure IT in some sense, maybe a traditional, maybe it's a little early to use that word, but it certainly provides the opportunity for students to take away a defined set of abilities that then serve them as they apply not only their knowledge, but their interest, their passions, their enthusiasm for related programs of study that literally span the board.
Yeah. And it's our position that there are several different dimensions of that. So at the user level, call it digital literacy, we all need to have some basic capability with these technologies. It's as essential today as reading and writing and arithmetic. You have to deal with this stuff. If you can't, you are disadvantaged. But that's different from someone who's actually working in an IT operation, an IT organization. You need more knowledge. You need more skills. You need to understand things that you don't need to understand as a user. So we need some sort of a common definition of, everybody in our society needs to know and be able to do at least this. And then everybody who's going to work in an IT organization needs to know and do this.
Absolutely, we would completely agree with that. It's not unusual if you look at the history of education to see that concepts get pushed down as new knowledge is acquired and built, right? So if you look at the high school curriculum, what's taught today obviously is very different than what was taught 50 years ago. We haven't seen yet really the high schools be able to deal with the IT phenomenon quite the same way. We need to have some confidence that certain baseline literacy is being established in high school, and a lot of people would say much earlier. And then as those students progress, they move through a sort of compendium of literacy abilities that they accumulate that lead them into college, onto which we can then add specialized activities, specialized skill sets that will change as the technologies change.
Right.
So you're so on point with the notion that there's this sort of fundamental digital literacy, whatever the language today is for that capability. And a lot of people have tried to get into that space, librarians and certainly a lot of other people, and really try to cement something there.
Well, and the librarians have been very successful in what was called information literacy. And you need to be able to do research. You need to be able to present your findings. You need to be able to think critically. And all of that happens in digital environments today. But just because you're information literate and you can use a computer to do research doesn't mean you know everything you need to know in order to be digitally literate. And so there's some confusion there. It's this hodgepodge of terms. It's the Tower of Babel.
Yes.
And it makes it really, really tough. But I'm glad you guys are taking this on because it's important. I mean, these are enabling technologies. It's the application of these technologies that creates the efficiencies and the productivities that allow our economic growth, that allow us to compete, and that create the businesses of the future. So we need to solve this stuff. The world's changed. So let's say that someone is interested in this work and wants to engage with it. They want to learn more. How can they do that?
Well, of course, we want them to go to our website. And so the two-year college committee's website is known as CAPSPACE, C-A-P. That stands for Curriculum Assessment and Pedagogy. So capspace.org. And from that website, they can avail themselves of any number of resources. And certainly from there, they can contact us. And all an individual has to say is, I am interested in seeing the development of curriculum related to computing disciplines. It can be as broad as that, or it can be somebody that says, I have a real interest in the field of IT, and in particular, I want to see the development of some established, identified, recognized, vetted, all those good adjectives, set of IT core skill sets.
Yeah. It's important work. It's really, really difficult. It's like, standards work takes forever, and it's messy. It's a sausage-making business. But in the end, you end up with systems that, that work together globally across country barriers and language barriers. And, we certainly need to get closer to that with our workforce development, like we have with our technology development.
Well, a lot of people will point to the diversity that sort of is America when it comes to economic development and economic growth. Certainly it's the case that there's a long history of individuals working in their garages, right? We all know the famous ones, that have spurred tremendous economic development, especially with regard to technology. And no one wants to do anything that takes away from the opportunity for individuals to pursue an idea, a unique vision, an individual talent that they have, a different way of doing things. On the other hand, America also has a reputation for establishing a framework within which those ideas can grow, they can take root, they can be communicated, they can be adapted, they can be funded, they can be built on. And so we want to find that balance, right, between the opportunity for students to pursue whatever path they want using technology-enhanced skills, but on the other hand, say that we have some fundamental core here that facilitates students being able to communicate not only their own experiences, but their own value as they pursue job opportunities and they pursue other opportunities to engage other people. And so, America's a wonderful place, but it's always a question of balance. And how do we balance the uniqueness of individualized service to businesses and industry from one part of the country to the other, to the notion of some language that's sufficiently common that we're all on the same page here and we can move forward as a nation. And I know that those are ideas that in particular MPICT has done an excellent job of saying, let's cut through some of the clutter, and at the heart of it, we're talking about economic drivers that are critical to, certainly I know your focus is often on California, but that same level of detail can be applied and extrapolated nationwide.
Well said. So we need some kind of agreed upon structure and nomenclature in order to be able to work together, and then a lot of freedom and flexibility within that to innovate.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks so much for being here, and
my pleasure.
Really appreciate what you do.
And I applaud the work that you're doing at your center. Excellent.
Thank you.